Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. The drama and details surrounding a double shooting in Shepherd yesterday now reveal multiple suspects, witnesses, and a drug deal gone bad.
Now, the first shooting suspect identified and charged in court today. A second suspect taken into custody, and authorities now on the hunt for a third man who also allegedly barged into that Shepherd home with guns drawn.
Prosecutors detailed the early Monday morning shooting in court documents filed against the first suspect.
40-year-old Gregory Allen Johnson is charged with 2 counts of assault with a weapon in that shooting that left a man and a teenage boy with bullet wounds in their home on Bees Lane there in Shepherd.
Sheriff's deputies arrested a second man around 11:30 this morning from inside a Billings home.
Q2's Zoe Zandora joining us now from the newsroom with more on that and other developing details. Zoe?
That's right, Russ and Jeanelle. When I arrived on scene at Custer Avenue and 2nd Street West here in Billings, I filmed this footage of the deputies arresting someone who Sheriff Linder says is a second man, in connection with the Monday morning shooting on Bees Lane and Shepherd. Now, this man did have an injury when he was located that was possibly a bullet wound. Linder said there were no shots fired during the arrest, and the injury does not appear to be life-threatening. Now, diving deeper into the shooting scene, court documents state one man was shot 3 times in the right arm, right side of his chest, and in his back. The second victim, a teenage boy, was shot in the arm. The man's wife and their 2-year-old child were also in the home during the shooting, along with the teenager's girlfriend. Now, the one unidentified victim named Johnson as the shooter and described his vehicle. The man's wife says she heard bangs on the front door, and later someone entered the unlocked back door with a gun. Her husband exchanged gunfire with the intruders multiple times. After reviewing surveillance video from a neighbor, deputies saw what looked like a flash coming from the home, then 3 people running out. Other videos showed flashes coming from the house and striking the fleeing vehicle. Johnson also told deputies that the first shots came from inside the home and his 2 companions fired back. He said he fired his gun in the air and then he stashed one of the guns at his home. Now, Russ and Jeanelle, the deputies are still searching for the third man. We will keep you updated as we learn more.
All right, thanks so much, Zoe.
Another man arrested accused of threatening motorists with a handgun while riding his motorcycle in Laurel and Park City.
23-year-old Ryan Good is being held on assault charges tonight. A press release from the Laurel Police Department states the first incident happened on Sunday when a man riding a Honda motorcycle pulled a handgun on a female driver in Laurel. A few hours later, the same motorcyclist allegedly pulled a handgun on a female driver and 2 children in Park City, threatening their lives.
Good is also a possible suspect in a Billings chase earlier that day that apparently started after he fired a shot into the air. On Monday, the motorcycle was located, seized, and towed as evidence. Later that day, Good went to the police department and asked why his motorcycle had been towed. After an officer identified Good as the same person in surveillance video, he was arrested.
Well, late this morning, Billings police made an arrest at gunpoint right in front of Senior High. Officers rushed a small Ford sedan after it stopped in the westbound lane of Grand Avenue. 2 females and 1 male exited the car as officers had their guns drawn. All 3 people were initially handcuffed, but the 2 females were later released at the scene. The incident snarled traffic and shut down Grand Avenue. No word tonight on the arrest or any charges.
A garage goes up in flames, slowing traffic on Highway 87 for a time this afternoon. When firefighters arrived on scene, they found that detached garage completely engulfed in flames. Battalion Chief Jason Lyon tells Q2 the crews were able to get the fire knocked out quickly and only minor damage was done to a nearby shed. The department says the cause was a meat smoker that was up against the wooden siding of the garage that caused the structure to catch fire. The garage is a total loss, but there were no injuries.
New information tonight as MTN confirms a second of the 3 victims in the Missoula road rage incident in March has died.
Chelan County, Washington coroner Wayne Harris confirms that Julie Blanchard died Monday afternoon in Wenatchee, Washington. Her cause of death has not been released and has not been tied to her shooting injuries. Julie Blanchard, her son Casey Blanchard, and Shelley Hayes were shot on March 14th off Expressway Boulevard when they pulled over after noticing a vehicle behind them had their flashing lights on. When the 3 pulled over, police say the suspect, Jonathan Birch, opened fire.
Hayes died on the scene, and both Casey and Julie Blanchard were transported to the hospital. Birch was later arrested near Evero after shooting Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Wade Palmer. On Saturday, Casey Blanchard returned home from a Salt Lake City hospital to his home in Stevensville. Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Wade Palmer returned home last week.
Montana Governor Steve Bullock will make his third trip to Iowa to campaign for president.
His trip this weekend will take him to western Iowa on a 3-day swing with 8 stops on his schedule. Bullock is spending most of his campaign time in Iowa as he tries to hit Democratic benchmarks to qualify for the upcoming Democratic debates. Bullock also made a pitch today to film production companies who are upset with the state of Georgia.
He said Montana has a great business climate and new film tax credits. Now, Georgia recently passed a strict anti-abortion law, and it could cost them in film industry dollars. Companies including Netflix, Disney, and AMC are considering pulling out from Georgia. The industry accounted for $2.7 billion in direct spending last year.
Well, 3 people rafting on the Gallatin River last night near Bozeman quickly found themselves in a life or death situation. MTN's Cody Boyer has the latest on the rescue mission and how it nearly ended much worse.
Severe hypothermia. I don't know how much longer she'd have lasted on that.
On angry waters like the Gallatin River this time of year, everything can change in an instant. Search and Rescue Commander Jason Jarrett says that's exactly what happened Monday night.
This particular call was of a small person yelling for help that was trapped on a cut bank on the Gallatin.
It was a woman trapped and freezing.
She was stranded along the bank in really cold weather, had been there for a while.
She was alone, but the commander says she wasn't when this all started.
She and 2 others, which we didn't find out till later, had dumped their 2 rafts in a kayak. Trying to get information from somebody that is hypothermic is problematic.
A search and rescue member found the 2 men upstream. They too were stranded. As for the woman,
she suffered an incredible bout of hypothermia. She'd been there for a long time, had been wet, was in a spot where she couldn't get off the bank. It was collapsing underneath her.
Commander Jarrett adds that this stretch of river, even on its good days, is not friendly.
It looks like the river, it looks like all the other rivers, but it's not. That's a really dangerous stretch.
Now take this creek just for an example. It's just a creek off of the Gallatin River, but if you look at the current, it's still just as strong. So while I am much safer where I'm standing here, take this current, put it there, much more dangerous.
Big cottonwood trees, big rocks, nasty strainers. It's a really hazardous place.
With waters like these, Jarrett says the 3 are extremely lucky.
Water deserves respect, regardless of where you are.
Importantly, Commander Jarrett says the trio is recovering. In Bozeman, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Now, the search and rescue commander says none of the 3 people rescued were wearing life jackets.
Well, a man is safe tonight after being rescued late last night from a cliff's edge in the Little Belt Mountains. That man was hanging onto a root after sliding on loose ground that he was climbing on. Once he was located, volunteer fire crews determined the man couldn't be rescued without specialized equipment. That's when the 40th Helicopter Squadron out of Malmstrom Air Force Base was dispatched, and it used its equipment to rescue the man and lower him to safety. First responders on the ground evaluated the man, determined that he was not injured throughout that whole ordeal.
A brand new fossil hall at the Smithsonian Museum will feature the nation's T-Rex, which just so happens to hail from Montana.
Q2's Samantha Sullivan spoke with the woman who first uncovered that once giant dinosaur some 30 years ago.
Hundreds of millions of years ago, dinosaurs roamed our state. Just over 30 years ago, Kathy Wonkel and her family were camping out near the Fort Peck Reservoir when she stumbled upon something in the clay.
Really, all of it was a corner of an envelope size, maybe 2 by 5 inches, but I could see the webbing of the bone marrow, and the light was just right, that I just knew it was bone.
What she had discovered would go on to be known as the nation's T-Rex.
And what we dug out turned out to be a shoulder blade and the lower arm of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So we took him home and called the Museum of the Rockies. So we knew they had the expertise.
After years at the Museum of the Rockies, the fossil was moved a few years back to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And come Saturday, it will be a centerpiece of the newly unveiled David H. Koch Hall of Fossils.
You know, they told us that 6 to 7 million people from all over the world go through the Natural History Museum every year. And so for a Montana T-Rex to become the nation's T-Rex, and it'll be identified prominently that it is Montana. So yeah, it's cool.
A piece of Montana, an impressive and amazing piece at that, now on display for the world to see. In Billings, Samantha Sullivan, MTN News.
Thanks so much, Sammy. Now, the exhibit opens this weekend, and the Wankels, along with 140 of their closest friends and family, will get a sneak peek.
All right, coming up on tonight's 5:30 News, a new project is looking to tackle Montana's meth problem and help provide a solution. We're going to take a look at what's being done.
And tonight in sports, Scott shows us why Q2's Athlete of the Week is one of only 4 Montanans to reach this week's NCAA Track and Field Championships.
And coming up in weather, hey, did you enjoy today's weather? Well, guess what? You get to enjoy it for a couple of more days, then get ready for a major weather pattern change. We'll talk about that coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.